Productions.
Yeah. I love my HBCU. And boy, I love it, love it. I love it, love it. I love my HBCU. And man, I hope my team they won one. Yeah. I hope my team they won one. Yeah. Man, I hope my team they won one. I hope my team they won one. Yeah. I tune into the HBCU Sports Lab to see if my team won or lost. If they lost, I'm quiet as a mouse. But if they won, keep tab. I'ma do the dab, yeah. Dr. Cavil, he know what he be talking about. Mike and Charles, they know what they be talking about. They compress the analytic data with the hip hop. If you know them like I know them, they gon' tell you if your team, if they won or lost, and who the ball. So listen to Professor, yes sir, and pay attention, cause he gon' teach a lesson. And you gon' learn today, you gon' learn today how your team they play, how they play, boy. You gon' learn today how your team they play, how they play, yeah. We represent that SWAC, that MEAC, and let me say, what's up to Tennessee, stay.
This is Dr. Cavil with Inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Washington and Charles Bishop. Welcome to episode 92 of Inside the HBCU Sports Lab radio show and podcast, the show that is covering the sporting HBCU diaspora, all things HBCU sports for institutions large and small, from NAIA to the Ncaa. We share insights and information on the HBCU sports culture, HBCU athletic aesthetics, as we like to say, to facilitate the story of HBCU athletic programs and the business of HBCU sports. How about that? I'm your host, Dr. Kenyatta Cavil, along with co-host Mike Washington and Charles Bishop. We are filming from our home studios and sending a signal live to our Caseways 12:30 a.m. studios with the Texas Radio Hall of Famer, none other than Ralph Cooper, in the beautiful home of Texas Southern University from Houston, Texas. How about that? With that, before I get to asking you all how you gentlemen's doing, I want to see what y'all thoughts are on this. You know, I got this fancy setup with my iPad on one device and start casting to the TV. You think I would, ruffle some feathers inside the house if I put my show on the master TV in there?
Just a little bit.
Yeah. All right, then I'll ignore this.
Yeah, you better walk. You better walk away from that one.
Yeah, I'm healed a little bit, brothers. I appreciate y'all protecting me in that manner. But with that, this is Professor Charles Bishop, Professor Mike Washington, as we welcome you into the lab. The semester is nearly over for a lot of colleges and universities out there. I think for Charles, it's officially over. He's taking his final exam. I don't know how he was able to get that done. I guess it's something about the graduate school level, they do what they want. We don't have finals for the undergrad until this week, but somehow you snuck that out of here last week. That's pretty good. I see you're looking better, man. You're looking more refreshed. Did you take a nice smoke or something?
I feel refreshed, nice little, like you said.
We keep it don't have to let everybody know your secrets. Shout out quickly before we go to y'all. Frank Nelson is on here talking about what's up, Doc, Charles, and Mike. Russ at Jackson State University jumps on here. Wendy Jenkins, one of the first on the show, getting us and checking us out. We appreciate that. Chuck Hunt is in the building.
Brother Hunt.
Wendy Jenkins Bishop says, looking forward to another great show tonight. No doubt about it. We appreciate all the frontline work that you're doing for us as well. Stay safe, stay protected. We appreciate you as you're doing it as we get into these holiday seasons. So everybody, before we get started, I'll be remiss if I didn't say that. Do not allow the holiday seasons for the reason be the wrong reasons that you put yourself in harm's way with COVID-19. Do put safeties. If you're going to make moves and do what you have to do, certainly understand it. For various reasons, you might have to do that. But and no other thing, we'd be remiss if we didn't say, stay safe, 6 feet, right? Make sure you're masked up.
Absolutely.
Washing your hands, using all the precautions that you can. Let's not allow these things to get it done out there. Dr. Kiki Baker Barnes, as she's doing her thing, always getting. We're gonna have her on the show, Commissioner. See if we can get some updates out of the Gold Coast Athletic Conference. They are hard at work, men's and women's. They're getting it done in a lot of ways. So
absolutely.
Jalen Riley out there, Alcorn checking it in. He has the famous picture of the corn, which so many people know what that means down there. Boy, that means you did hard to it. Oh, Kay Johnson is in the house. Good evening, inside the HBCU Sports Lab. Thank you. Let me make sure I give a shout out to Hillman Frazier is in the house. No doubt about it.
Senator Frazier.
That's Senator Frazier.
Yes, from the great state of Mississippi.
Hey, Charles, how you work that out? You got to. Boy,
I'm telling you.
Big time. I didn't realize that. Boy,
Charles over there pulling some strings.
Not on Facebook. Make sure you let them know. That's right. Go to YouTube, JBN Online, Twitter. You can also do that at myJBNN1. AD True from Braun and AD Sports Rap. They get in and they had a great show talking about the MEAC Top 50. If you didn't see it live, go check it out. With that, let me get on to the business of the course of the show. We'll come back and chime in. Some of the people join us. Share, like, get us out there. Let folks know we are in the lab. We are about to get ready to do the business of what we do. With that, Professor Bishop, what news do you have for us on terms of the HBCU news front? And before I do that, today's episode on the Inside the HBCU Sports Lab, got to make sure we pay these bills, is sponsored by THG Agency, LLC. THG Agency is a company that provides sporting and educational consulting and data analytics. Today's show will be a good one, as we will be discussing the latest in the HBCU sports world as always. Later, we will talk with managing an athletic conference during COVID-19 pandemic climate, preparing for the upcoming basketball season and SWAC Sports Beyond COVID-19 with Dr. Charles McClelland, the SWAC Commissioner, if you would, will be coming up on the show. So that's what we have prepped for you, a good one. So share and tell everybody if y'all want to hear a little more insight of what's really going to go on with SWAC basketball. We're going to at least have the top captain of the ship tell us more about it. So with that, Charles, what are some other HBCU news of the week?
Sure thing. Let's jump right into it. Jackson State's Amisha Williams, she was named to the Lisa Leslie Award watch list for the first time. Candidates for the National Center of the Year honor were announced by the Naismith Memorial Basketball Hall of Fame and the Women's Basketball Coaches Association on this past Friday, November 13th. Amisha Williams, she is the lone SWAC and HBCU student athlete represented. She was ninth in the conference in scoring last year, averaging 12.8 points per game, second in the conference in rebounds with 10.1 rebounds per game. And she was 12th in free throw percentage. She also ranked in the top 5 in the country in rebounds and top 15 in blocks per game. So kudos goes out to Amisha Williams for being named on the Lisa Leslie Award watch list.
Oh, it's big time, big time. Make sure you say that name again. We need to make sure we get some love. You on the watch list?
No doubt. Amisha Williams, yes.
All right. Yeah, I know you want to get that love. I'm going to make sure you get a little love in there. Early, make sure it was in there. You want to get backed up. You said, let me jump on this one early. I see.
Let me get it out there.
Professor Washington, and he was down there doing a lecture series, Charles. So this
I saw.
I was like, okay, all right. So you trying to live up
to
the title. Yeah, what is it? Before let me give a couple more shout outs as we have more people joining us. Y'all share and like and let them come on into the lab. We're going to bring it. It's time to get into a little more than sports talk. So let's do what we do. Tamika Newman, PV Volleyball, checking in. Yes. Lonnie Shaw with the Aggies out of D-Town. You know, he's always in the lab representing us. And we have Russ Rusty talking about hashtag DST1913. Must be something special. No doubt about it. Lonnie gives us a nice little wave there. So we're in the house. Shout out and happy Founders Day to the men of Omega Sci-Fi D9.
No doubt.
About it. And that's courtesy of our producer, making sure that we do the respectable things.
Absolutely.
Alpha can be a little tough out there. You know, y'all original. So I know how y'all do it. But to our producer, Roy, give him much credit in terms of the background, making sure we get that nice respect and love in for the D9. Good point. Jeffrey K. Rumling. Tell my fam, you was in the house, checking in from Jacksonville, Florida. Bring the knowledge, fellas. Yes, indeed. Willis Alex Hine, he had a great interview in terms of sports rap as well, from a filming history perspective. Go check it out. I told you already. They putting in work over there at the Sports Rap with Braun and AD. Good evening, everyone. Here to get my Tuesday HBCU Sports Lecture. That's what we are here to do. Richmond, Virginia, checking in from CIAA country. Yes, indeed. Let's go to Mike and see what else we have in terms of HBCU Sports News of the Week.
Absolutely. Without question. I know many of you, some folks have kind of, backed off of watching the NFL, but I would be remiss if we didn't give NFL players of the week their just due from HBCU. Darius Leonard, linebacker, Indianapolis, third season, South Carolina State, had 9 tackles, 3 solos, in a 34-17 win over Tennessee. Didn't see the game, but understand that it was really well. Brandon Parker, offensive tackle, Las Vegas, third season from North Carolina A&T. The Aggies, proud over there, started left tackle the entire game in a 37-12 win over Denver. Teron Armstead, left tackle, New Orleans, 8th season from UAPB. As my uncle would say, UNAPB. That's the Lions. He sent me his picture. As a matter of fact, he sent me his picture of when he started. It was the year after LC Greenwood left. He tweeted that. I'll show that to you. All right. Anyways,
sure. Make sure we give him some love, man. That's a bad brother, man. Boy, he talking about aging well, man. He still got that character, boy. Big Earl, boy. I tell you, he was coming there. You swear he was pledging us by himself.
Yeah.
What y'all doing, man?
His look was a pledge.
Big time fun memories, characters in is we was thinking we were grown, but really we were growing up. And with all seriousness, that's why you see Mike going up like brothers, and Charles has quickly come into the fold in so many different ways. When you see the synergy here, it's real. I mean, this is brothers. We've done it in terms of covering it. You would think we were back in college, how we had to kind of make sure that we did it right to get to places where we need to go, particular with the work that we do in our schedule. This is not necessarily a full-time. It's certainly our love. And when you have to mix in what you're doing as your first-time responsibility, and then mixing in. So it's, whether it's getting on those floors back then and living up to it now. Now we look better. We in the hotels. We got rooms and stuff like that. But still, it's funny when you fly and try to get these last-minute hotels and getting up early so you can make sure you get and come on right back the same day so you can be at work at either something at night or the next morning. And Mike, boy, Mike and Charles, Mike one time was coming from overseas and called us in Atlanta. I was like, oh my goodness, boy, you serious about this crowd right here?
Yeah, I appreciate it.
The ski giving us some love. Go ahead, Mike, jump in there.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
But give some big love to big Earl, boy. Big Earl.
Yeah.
Big boy.
One couple of more real notables. Trenton Cannon, running back, kickoff returner for Carolina. From Virginia State, 3 kickoff returns totaling 151 yards, including a 98-yard return. Big ups to Trenton Cannon. I think if you go to Black College Sports page, he's the Black College Player of the Week. And then Danny Johnson, who's a DB, defensive back, y'all. That's what I played from Washington. That's right, from Southern. Had 5 kickoff returns totaling 130 yards. Say again?
You really gonna tell these folks you was a defensive back?
I was a DB and a kickoff return. I was a specialist, son.
Did you have some speed back in them days? You done put on the muscle as you went to the military and served the country.
Man, I got speed where it counts. That's all I tell my boys.
I told you. Better be careful.
Hey, Mike.
University. George Atterbury checking in from DMV. Howard in the house. Howard University. Howard just keep winning, boy. We got some news for Howard. Another recruit coming in now. I'm going to bring it to you so you can get some details on that, Charles. Jason Cavil, one of them young guns. We had the other one on. Another one of these young guns out of the SWAC office. That's Dr. Jason Cavil. Let me put some respect on him. Dr. Jason Cavil, as he gets it done, Associate Commissioner, putting in a lot of work, man. That's a brilliant mind over there. With all due respect, that's a brilliant mind. And usually I wouldn't do this, but I'm gonna give him his respect. You know, it is Founders Day for him out there. We said it earlier, so I ain't too quick to be repeating it. But since he joined us, I'm giving his respect out there for all the brothers. I would say for Omega Psi Phi on your Founders Day, man. Go hard in the paint, but be safe. You know how y'all can get out there. Y'all can have a little fun too. So slow down. COVID's still alive. COVID's still real.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Much respect for them guys out there. So boy, we gonna have some fun out here, man. It's real. So we're gonna bring you some entertainment, bring you some knowledge. You dealing with COVID-19. We're gonna bring you on with that. And without further ado, we're gonna get into the mix and we'll get into some more of the updated news because we do have a lot of great news out there. But as we do that, let's go straight to the source, the man of the hour. He is no stranger to this show. And we can even go back to Prairie View and talk a little noise, but we're not going to do that. We're going to keep it. He's the commissioner now. We're going to keep it clean. We will talk to the leading athletic administrator across the country, I would say, in terms of what he has got done previously, but most succinctly in this last year in the midst of COVID-19. Just think about that. SWAC Commissioner Dr. Charles McClelland is in the building. He is in the lab. To provide us some updates of managing COVID-19. Many of you heard the Ncaa has talked about basketball will starting next week. So we thought we'd go straight to the source, and everybody was wondering. Questions about the SWAC, men's and women's, how would they proceed? They've gotten the information out there, schedules out there. But we're going to take a little deeper dive and get in that perspective and get the answers straight from the commissioner, if you would. So with that being said, Commissioner, how you doing?
Doing very well, Dr. Cavil. Appreciate you having me on the show.
Good to have you here. With that, let's jump straight to it and get right into it. What are your thoughts on the conference basketball strengths this season? So we're going to first allow you to put on your commentary hat. Your analysts, people may not realize that that's a part of what you started. So you got a little bit in your bag of tricks. So just in terms of your framework, we know you might be a little biased, but you can do it. Give us to you. What are your thoughts, men's and women's basketball? What are the strengths this season that people should be looking for and getting ready for?
Well, I will first start on the women's side, and I think across the board, our women's league is one of the best mid-major leagues that's out there. You look at the job that Coach Tamika Reed has done at Jackson State. You look at, the caliber of player. Her center is up for an award now as being one of the best centers in America. I mean, that's huge. She's continued on the recruiting trail. She signed a 4-star. So she's building a powerhouse there at Jackson State. Cynthia Cooper Dyke came back to Texas Southern last year, made her presence felt. Actually thought that this was going to be one of the better basketball tournaments that we were going to have last year that COVID kind of took short. Southern University coming off their championship season, they were loaded, and the team that I think had one of the better shots of upsetting, and I'm going to use one of Dr. Cavil's words, if you will, was Alabama A&M. They came into the tournament, they're hot. And just keep in mind, everybody coming back. All of our teams are loaded. Sandy Pugh at Prairie View A&M University, I think they picked her 5th. That's not going to sit well with Sandy. Frida Freeman Jackson at Alabama State is going to be in the thick of it as well. So Mississippi Valley State was vastly improved. Nate Kilbert is at Alcorn State University. Say what you want to. Nate has always been competitive. He's back home. He has the support of Shirley Walker. He has the support of Brave Nation. Don't sleep at all on Nate Kilbert. And last but not least, and again, I know you're saying I'm hitting them all. This is not a public service announcement, as you stated. This is all legitimate facts. Don Brown at Arkansas at Pine Bluff, and she's loaded. She has some transfers that have come in. And I think that she's going to have an opportunity to make noise. So I think you can take 7 or 8 teams and toss them up, and whoever falls in the square is going to be those teams that's going to compete. I think it could be any of the 10. On the men's side,
before you jump to the men's side, I want to jump in there and piggyback what you said, and then let you have the floor back in terms of the men's side. But on the women's side, I just dug into that. And if you look at the top 8 teams in the conference that were ranked by the coaches and the SIABs, top 8 teams, 7 of the top 18 coaches have won a championship in this conference over the last 10 years. Think about that. So, as you said, that's not just a public service announcement. The resume in terms of coaches that are leading these women's programs is there. And obviously, we don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves because we got a season to play in regards to that. But then you got the nerve that you accepted the request from Bethune-Cookman, who has won a championship recently in their league. So the women's side of the SWAC, for you all that talk about Chivalry Ain't Dead, and I know we used to talking about a lot of men's basketball, and it's going to be good, and I think Charles is going to show you why he's so talented, because not only can he do it on the business side, he just gave you a little analyst on the women's side. Let's see what he's going to do with the men. But just think about that in terms of the women's side, in terms of just the coaching prowess of what's going on in the SWAC. Boy, I tell you, boy, you got a plum peach. But let me jump back into you and let you show out a little more, Charles, because you did a good job on the women's side. Let's test you on the men's side.
Well, I think on the men's side, there's a lot of question marks, to be very honest with you. And I think that it's going to lend for some excitement. And just to touch upon both men and women, keep in mind, this is going to be a freebie for the student athletes. If they decide to exercise their ability to come back, they can come back. The Ncaa has already made that. So this year they can go and they can go into the lab, the HBCU Sports Lab, and do some testing and concoction. And then when Bethune-Cookman and FAMU comes in, you know, it's going to be an exciting league, as you stated, across the board. I think the men, there's still some things to prove. You got Sean Woods at Southern University, which I was actually surprised that they picked Southern University second. You know, as an athletics director, I always said they go back to the previous year, minus 1 or 2 teams. They always rank you how you finished last year. So I was always not liking those polls simply because it's kind of difficult. But I think this year is even more intriguing. There were 2 or 3 games that separated, you know, 2nd place and 7th place. Alabama A&M, you know, they have Jared Hicks, you know, an all SWAC freshman coming in. Lindsey Hunter has his son, Caleb Hunter, there. And as you know, SWAC is a guard league. So, you know, I was kind of surprised that some of those teams were ranked as low as they were ranked in the preseason. Obviously, Texas Southern has always been in the top 3, but I don't think that that's a gimme either. Prairie View A&M University with Coach Byron Smith, he lost quite a bit. But one thing that you can say about Byron, ever since he took over for Coach Wren mid-season, they've been competitive. If you go back and look at the record of Coach Smith, when he took over from Coach Wren, he had an overall winning record. So I think the men's basketball are so close from a talent perspective. I think X's and O's is going to be the difference on the men's side. On the women's side, I think that they just got some young ladies that can flat out play, and flat out play not just on the women's side. You could mix some of them on the men's side and they still will come out with double-doubles, right?
Right.
You know, from a Grambling State perspective on the women's side, you know, Coach, he's kind of starting over a little bit. He lost a lot of his firepower. Grambling State on the men's side, they're bringing their firepower back. I think, again, you're going to see quite a bit of parity on the men's side. I think 1 or 2 games, again, will separate 2nd and 3rd place. The challenge for us this year is going to be COVID. And I know we're going to get into something about these things, but what we've tried to do in the conference office, realizing that we're going to have an unbalanced schedule. When we say unbalanced schedule because of COVID, we anticipate teams not being able to get their games in. We wanted to create a scenario to where we could rank teams and also crown a regular season champion, comparing teams that don't have even records. So what's better, 15-0 or 16-1? Well, in my opinion, it depends on who you played and who you lost to.
Well, that's true.
So we're trying to develop a formula that will take all of that into consideration. And fortunately for us, because of the 80% rule in baseball, we have a lot of experience in doing that.
Man, I'll let Mike get in here, but you got folks that saying you're doing your thing, Commissioner.
Yeah.
Just wanted to make sure that the folks are paying attention to you. And to your point again, just show out, Commissioner. Don't be trying to take a job now. You're doing pretty well. They give you some pointers. You talk about look out now, Prairie View. This is one of those things that you can smile when you're the commissioner of the conference when your teams are doing it. In terms of win streaks in the country, all Division I, Prairie View has the second longest winning streak, 27 games, behind only Gonzaga. To talk about that, and then another HBCU out of Ncaa, you have North Carolina Central. Well, you have Southern going to play North Carolina Central. This year, Coach Mouton, everything works out, as you talked about. That could be interesting. Can Southern make a statement for the SWAC in terms of not just getting a win against Ncaa Rival School, in terms of top teams that are going to be at the top of their conference? Can they stop their win streak, and who's going to stop the Prairie View win streak, or will Prairie View continue with their win streak at home? Boy, I'll tell you, it's fascinating when you talk about what's going on in the SWAC and HBCU sports. With that, Mike, Professor Washington, if you would, jump in here and ask.
Yes, how you doing, Dr. McClelland? Let me just say you are looking very dapper today. I'm trying to work with Dr. Cavil to get him to upgrade his dress, and he's already. I'm sorry. I had to throw a parting shot in there. But so anyway, as we move to the spring and we're moving to, can you talk us through any of the changes, upgrades, and preparing, or putting in place COVID-19 protocols for the basketball season? Is there anything special? I know you've talked to it before, but are there anything, that you've changed now that you've, seen what the NCAA is doing or what other conferences are doing? Are there any other changes that we can look forward to?
Well, I think that's a good question. I can tell you there is no magical pill or no magical plan that anybody can put out. But from a fan's perspective, I think you could feel comfortable that the Southwestern Athletic Conference did what we feel the best that we could do in putting together a solid plan. And we copied a lot. So we have these consortiums. So for example, in men's and women's basketball, we're tied in with the SEC, the American Conference, the Sun Belt, the Atlantic Sun, the Southern Conference, and then on the women's side, the OVC and the Southland. So their doctors are collaborating with each other. And quite frankly, we took the best of what all of these people are doing. You have some of the best infectious disease minds that are part of these consortiums. And what we did, we just rode the coattails of quite a few of the things that they put out. So when it comes to testing, when it comes to, quarantining, and I go back, we have weekly calls with the NCAA. Dr. Braun is the chief medical officer with the NCAA. He's tied into the CDC. So there's synergy coming all the way down from the medical experts within the federal government, through the commissioner's area, through our consortiums, through the Southwestern Athletic Conference. So we've taken, advisement from some of the documents that have been handed down to us by these conferences and by the NCAA and by the CDC, and we've merged them all together. But again, there is no magical pill when it comes to this. But the one thing that I can say that we did different that some of the others did not do, when the CDC says, so they rank sports, you rank them high, intermediate, and low. The high sports, such as basketball and football, means that you're to test 3 times a week. Low means that you might only have to test once every 2 weeks, depending on how you perform, your contact tracing, how you perform practice, how you interact, how you socialize. And the CDC actually revised that 15-minute 6 feet from a one time to a cumulative, which is something that just came out in the resocialization plan. So it's going to forever evolve. What we've done from the Southwestern Athletic Conference is said before any Southwestern Athletic Conference member steps on the field of play, you have to be tested and you have to have a negative test. So we have all of the guidance that the CDC put in, all of the guidance that the Ncaa put in, and all of the best guidance that these doctors from these major hospitals around the nation have put in. And then we put another caveat in there, is that we want to test prior to. So we're giving our schools some options, rapid antigen or PCR tests. So, but theoretically, if you test positive on a rapid antigen, you have to follow that up with a PCR test. But what we're going to have the ability to do, and we are actually working with a third party on our rapid antigen test, to where there has been some advancement in rapid antigen. I'm not going to put the company out there because I don't want this to be a public service announcement for the company. Plus, I don't want everybody running out there getting the test and we don't have the ability to get them. But we're liking it somewhat like a pregnancy test. So you'll take the swab, you put it in the tube. You don't have to send it off to a lab. 15 minutes later, you'll get the results in real time. So you have to get a certification to be able to do it. But once you get the certification, it's real time. You can do it on the road. So theoretically, we can test multiple times. And the cost for this test is going to be between $16 and $23. So you can test rapidly, you can test efficiently, and you can do multiple tests over multiple days to be able to increase the reliability of the test, because we all know rapid antigen isn't as reliable as the PCR test. So we put that in despite the low risk, intermediate risk, high risk. But again, as we move to sports, for example, for golf, we're not going to force, all of the testing, because we know that they're going to have on masks. We know that they're going to be socially distant. And the probability of them being able to catch COVID, given the parameters of COVID, is really low. So we're not going to force schools to, go that extra step in sports that we know that there's low risk and they're already doing more than what's required. So it's got to be an ongoing, evolving process. But we do think that we have a strong handle on it. Yeah. And again, being part of these consortiums helps us tremendously, because, all of these individuals have medical schools. And again, you're talking about some of the best medical schools in the nation that's a part of these consortiums, and we have access to their information, access to their data, access to their expertise. It's just a blessing that we're in the position that we're in to be able to do all of that and feel comfortable that our student athletes, staff, officials, all are going to be safe.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you for that. If you would, Charles, if you stick around just for a little bit, we'll take this quick break. This is Dr. Cavil's Inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Washington, Charles Bishop. Stay with us. Quick break, and we'll be back with the rest of the interview with Dr. Charles McClelland, the Commissioner of the SWAC. This is Dr. Cavil with Inside the HBCU Sports Lab. We're interviewing the SWAC Commissioner, Dr. Charles McClelland, and we're going to let Charles jump in here with a follow-up question as we get back into the interview.
Sure thing. Dr. McClelland, I know each state has their own COVID protocols in terms of seating capacity and whether fans will, what fans that can attend the games. But I wanted to ask in regards to the SWAC basketball tournament, what will the protocols be with regards to fans actually attending the tournament?
We haven't gotten there yet, Charles, and I appreciate the question. And we're going to evaluate. We've gotten a lot of positive feedback from the vaccination. We probably have to educate our community about taking the vaccination, because I know that the African-American community is not that excited about that process. We know wearing masks and social distancing has been politicized. We hope that takes a backseat. And we understand right now that the numbers are actually going up. So we have to take all of that into consideration, and we have to figure out. But you brought up a great point. everything that we do within the Southwestern Athletic Conference is trumped by what the local communities say has to be done. So, Harris County is different than Waller County, is different than Hinds County, that's different than Montgomery County, that's different in Madison County. And all of those different areas, from Texas Southern to Prairie View to Alabama State to Alabama A&M, have local guidelines that might supersede anything that we do. So there's a lot of questions about, if you're on the road and somebody tests positive, what do you do? Well, the one thing that we do know, if you test positive on the road, you're subject to that local jurisdiction's rules and regulations. Within our plan, we are ensuring that each member institution has a plan to get their student athlete back to campus. So if somebody tests positive on the road, one of the things you have to do is have the ability to be able to transport that student athlete. We're not going to leave anybody in any type of foreign city and they are left to fend for themselves. So when you start talking about fan base, it's going to vary from school to school, state to state, local community to local community. Here in Birmingham, we anticipate having fans. Our tournament will be at Bartow Arena downtown, the home of where UAB plays. It's a pretty big venue. We're hoping mid-March we'll have some flexibility to be able to continue to bring fans in. But I urge everybody, I don't, again, mean to sound like a public service announcement, but use me as a guinea pig. As soon as the vaccine is available, I'm going to take it. If I die, then y'all don't take it. You can use me as a guinea pig, but I will be taking it. I'll be first in line. So follow me. Follow us on SWAC, Instagram, and Twitter. If I'm fine, you need to go take it so we can get this thing behind us.
Sure thing.
I appreciate you stepping up to the plate, Dr. Charles McClelland. Boy, I tell you, the man of the hour. Not only are you a great commissioner, you're also a service to the public health community, particularly with the African-American community and SWAC community. So, yep, you take it, you do well. I'll be next in line because I already heard from the house we taking it. So that just will be more supportive and help me make my decision when I take all the folks' family to take it. So good deal. With that, I'm going to sneak in here a question from Poster. I thought it was a pretty good question. A lot of folks out there. It's going to talk a little bit more about your experience from the basketball side on the committee in regards to the ranking. Does it start with the preseason ranking, or do you wait until games are played before ranking takes place in terms of teams where they'll be seated in the tournament? Could you give that type of information?
Yeah, so there is no evaluation of prior year teams. So everything is done from game one. So when you're talking about the net is called the NCAA evaluation tool. And we've actually tweaked the net this year to kind of make it a little bit more simple to figure out, but it basically comes down to efficiencies. So, and this is part of the overall SWAC plan. If you have somebody, for example, I won't use a school, Charles McClelland University, and I go out and I play Duke, I go out and I play Kentucky, and I go out and play Gonzaga, and I get beat 80-20, my efficiencies are way low. So the defensive efficiency, the offensive efficiency, how many times I turn the ball over, all of those things go into the net. How much you lost by, how much you won by, whether it's at home, whether it was on the road. Well, if I go out and I play my 10 road games are the top 10 teams and I get beat by an average of 50 points, you might as well write the season off. There's nothing that you can do to improve the net. What we're trying to do within the Southwestern Athletic Conference is tier our teams. So if you finished last year as a top tier team and you got somebody, 3 or 4 of your starters coming back, then what we're talking about, the SWAC is giving you a greater level of flexibility to play this range. If you're finished in the bottom quarter of the net, there's 357 teams now. Let's say you finished 353, then we're going to say you cannot play any higher than, let's say, 200. And then we're going to develop, and we've already begun this process, we're going to develop a sheet on all of the teams that are ranked, who's paying game guarantees and how much they pay, to assist you to be able to go out and find a net school of 200 that still will pay you that game guarantee, that now your efficiency can be higher. Because ultimately what happens, we always have teams, hovering around, we've gotten as high as 71 during some of the Mike Davis teams last year. Prairie View was our highest at the 120, 130, 140 range. But as soon as they get into SWAC competition, even when they win, the net starts to suffer because they're playing teams that are in that bottom criteria. What we have to do is not so much focus on the top 2, but we have to focus on those bottom 8. So the net and the rankings start from the first game, and it's really based upon efficiency. Now, keep in mind, from an NCAA perspective, the net is only one tool. Now, we will go out, we will evaluate, there's a lot of things that go into ranking teams, but net does have some significance. You have all of these rankings, the Ken Palm rankings, and I can go on and on and on. There are about 5 different matrix that we'll take a look at in the committee room, the net, being one tool. As a committee member, we have responsibility for certain conferences. So I have to go out. I have 3 primary conferences and 4 secondary conferences. It's incumbent upon me to know every player, every team, every game. I have access to Synergy. I can watch every basketball game in the nation. As a matter of fact, I'm required to watch a minimum of my 7, but I have to be knowledgeable of every Division I team in America. So I literally have to watch film as if I'm a coach. So there's a lot of things that go into it. When we get into the room,
wow,
all of these matrix are on computers and they're on screens, and we've already done preliminary rankings. We've had conversations. So just don't think that it's net. There's a lot that goes into that process. But, and I know I kind of took 2 different things and tied them into that one question. Look for the Southwestern Athletic Conference to continue to rise in the net rankings just by us understanding what goes into the rankings, how to schedule, how to allow them to continue to get their game guarantees. And if we can move up, then we'll move out of that 16th seed or 15th seed. And people ask, and I ask the same thing as athletics director, as, Mike Davis' team beat Michigan State, and he beat, beat Kansas State, if I'm not mistaken, that year. Played all of these teams close, and we thought we were going to get good seed. And who were we rewarded with? A 15th seed and a number 2 Arizona that should have been a number 1 seed, but lost a couple of games at the end that I think ultimately went to the Sweet 16. How do you get out of that? And that is to improve as an overall conference, to get out of that 15th seed. So when we do have a team that is worthy of a 12 seed or a 13 seed, we're actually able to get it and not be hindered, because it's not Texas Southern that was the issue. It was the other 8 or 9 that was the issue that year. So we understand the system, and we're going to work to improve it.
Man, that is great news. I know a lot of people out there like that.
Wow.
I see Mike getting all excited when you talk about that data analytics, and that I told people Texas Southern University, we got some classes in it now. Sports analytics is real. Y'all can talk about not using sports analytics if you want to. A lot of people are going to get paid really well by understanding sports analytics, and this is just an example of what that new marketplace looks like. With that, although Mike is so excited, I saw Charles. And so I'm going to shift to Charles and then go to Mike, and then we'll let Commissioner Dr. Charles McClelland have the last words, and then we'll let him get on to his busy schedule. With that, Charles, go ahead with the follow-up question, please.
I'm going to just follow up on what you were saying, Dr. McClelland, in terms of having a much better understanding of, I guess, the tiering teams, if you will. How much does that, just help the conference overall in terms of having just a much better understanding of how to get out of that 16 seed? I mean, I'm just hearing you talk about it. This is phenomenal.
Well, Charles, knowledge is power.
Yeah.
And now we know. As I stated, we now have a seat at the table, and there are a lot of things that we probably should have known, but we didn't know. And now that we're at the table, I have a much better understanding of what's going on. And being on the men's basketball committee, you see, what it takes in order for you to move your conference forward. I'll give this as a challenge to Dr. Kenyatta Cavil, and you can actually have your class to do it. Look at what the Southern Conference did over the last 5 years. The Southern Conference was ranked as one of the lowest conference. And they use this model, and they're actually now, they have 3 teams that's in the top 100 of the net, and they're consistently getting higher seeds because they understood it's about who you play, where you play them, if you win, and the efficiencies of how you play. So, for example, if I play Kentucky and I lose to Kentucky by 10, under the old RPI system, you got points for that. But under the new net system, it's going to look as to how many times did I turn over the ball? What was my shooting percentage? What was my 3-point shooting percentage? What was their 3-point shooting percentage? And all of that is built into your score. And you could literally, Stephen F. Austin beat Duke at Duke, and they were as high as the mid-40s, right?
Wow.
Then they lost to Texas A&M Corpus Christi. They lost on the roll in double overtime, and it moved them from 40 to 80. So again, you have to understand, and again, it wasn't so much the loss as it was where Corpus Christi was in comparison to the entire conference.
Sure.
So it ultimately hurt Stephen F. Austin. So knowledge is the key. Being able to understand what the big boys understood. None of this is secret. None of this is, proprietary information. This is all what the big boys have understood for so long. And now that we're at the table, we have a better understanding of it as well. And we'll start to make adjustments to help our conference move forward.
Phenomenal.
I really
excellent.
Go to Mike. The commentary, keep them coming. Great comments. People getting engaged with all this. We have some of your comments on the board, and people really appreciate that information you're providing, the work that you're putting in. So I want to say that. Professor Washington, go ahead. Question in there, please.
Yeah. One last question that kind of came up. The NCAA staff is basically in talks with the state of Indiana, and you're probably more dialed in this with I am, but they're considering potentially hosting the 68-team tournament around the metropolitan area, in the dates of March and April, kind of moving to a consolidated atmosphere. I'm sure you're in these talks and know much more than I plan to know. My question is, are there, if there are any, reverberating ripple effects, for SWAC toward the end of the season? Is there anything that we may take from that? And what are your thoughts on that movement, if you will, if it progresses in that direction?
Well, it's going to be difficult for the SWAC to replicate anything that the NCAA does. Right? So, that's going to be difficult. I think the approach that we've taken within the Southwestern Athletic Conference is we understand that there's going to be disruptions. As we stated earlier, local municipalities will have jurisdiction on how this thing goes. SWAC can put out all of the rules and regulations that we want, but it's going to be the local jurisdiction that's going to determine who's isolated, who's quarantined. So, for example, there's a state, and again, I won't call them out, there's a state on the East Coast that you cannot test out of a false negative. So if you have a rapid antigen test and you test positive, right, or false negative or false positive, but if you test positive, you're supposed to follow that up with a PCR test based upon CDC guidelines. Even if that PCR test comes back negative, this state says you still have to stay in quarantine for 14 days. There's other states that will allow you to test out of that. We understand that those are some differences from state to state, city to city, county to county. So we understand there's going to be disruption. We're not planning on makeup games. So some ask, why did you stick with the 18-game format? And some actually ask, have you considered moving to what you see others doing as far as playing one team twice back to back? We looked at all of that, and still it might not necessarily be off the table. We could at the very last minute move to something else, or even that if it's going to assist us in getting our tournament done and our regular season done. What we settled on was there's 13 Division I games that are required in order for you to be able to go to the NCAA tournament. So that's not NAIA, that's not Division II, it's 13 Division I games. Both non-conference and conference will count. So what we have adopted within the Southwestern Athletic Conference is in order to qualify for our regular season champion And in order to qualify to go to the SWAC championship, you must have 13 games. Why? Because you can't go to the NCAA tournament. We can't not have our automatic qualifier to go because they didn't meet the minimum number of games. And we felt like we had an 18-game conference schedule that gave you 5 games in order to miss. So some say, well, if you have to pull a team, that's automatically going to be 4 games that you miss. That could be true and that could not be true. But we wanted to have some cushion in order for you to do that. So if you have any type of non-conference schedule from a Division I perspective, then you add whatever you do from a conference to get those 13 games. So we understand there's going to be disruptions. We understand that you possibly are not going to be able to make it to the finish line. What we want to do is take non-conference and conference, combine them together, get that 13. And then we've come up with a creative way of seeding teams to determine if 15-1 is better than, 14-1. And again, some of that is going to be, you must have a minimum winning percentage to be considered in contention for the SWAC title. We're going to look at games played, games won. We're going to look at who you played. So for example, if I'm 14-0 and I qualify for the tournament, but I played the bottom 6 teams to get my 14 wins, and you're 15-1, and you played the top teams, but you lost, in my opinion, the person that played the tougher schedule should be the person that represents, because we want to send the best team. So we just can't go on winning percentage. So we have to put all of these different factors in to try to see, to ensure that it's fair and equitable. And not saying that anybody will do this, not throwing the baseball coaches under the bus when I was athletics director, but we don't want people to determine, okay, well, I'm 14-0, and if it's just based on percentage, I'm going to shut this thing down and I'm going to win the championship. So we have to put all of those mechanisms in place to ensure competitive equity and to ensure fairness and to ensure that I don't have to send a team back across the southeastern United States because they missed a game. That's not going to be fair budgetary wise. So we eliminated all of that. And the fact that we travel on buses, we somewhat have this semi-bubble. And I think Dr. Braun said it best when it comes to COVID-19. The rate of infection on the field for COVID-19 has been non-existent. We are catching COVID by eating, meeting, and greeting. So he's saying eating, meeting, and greeting is where all of these cases are coming from. So if we can control our environment, wear your mask, stay socially distant, not going to restaurants, eating buffets, getting to go, and they can be healthy. I'm not saying pizza and chicken all the time. Shout out to Frenchies. The meeting room where you have them all in close contact, if we can meet, let's say, on the basketball court and space everybody out, those are the 3 main factors of catching COVID. And I think we can control that. Plus, the majority of our institutions are finishing school this week. As a matter of fact, all of our institutions are finishing school this week. So you're seeing this spike in numbers. We anticipate our numbers to go down after these campuses are cleared. Most of our member institutions are not coming back to mid-January. So we actually think that we're going to have a window between the beginning of December all the way to the end of February where we can create a relative safe, and I want to call it bubble because it's not going to be a bubble, but a safe environment, semi-bubble, that we're going to be able to get these games in. And hopefully by the time we get to the February timeframe, either vaccine, mask mandates, the numbers are going to be down. So again, we don't know, but we have all of these various plans. And at the end of the day, if we have to shut it down, make no mistake, we'll shut it down.
Okay. No problem. Really appreciate the insight there. A lot of information given there in regards to that. And that's why we brought it on. A lot of people in the conference and HBCU fans across the nation wanted to get a little more insight in terms of HBCU sports moving forward, specifically for the sport of men's and women's basketball. And I think you shined a light on that. As we do on the show, are there any final comments that you want to share in regards to a question that we might not have had that you really think is important to get out?
No, I just want to thank the fans for continuing to support the Southwestern Athletic Conference as we move forward to opening up basketball. Please understand that, we're still trying to maintain the health and safety. Our student athletes have put in a tremendous amount of work to try to get this season off. Just work with us in the member institutions on whatever adjustments we have to make, and wear your mask, stay socially distant, and I promise you we're going to be able to get through this thing. Playing intercollegiate athletics has turned out, again, the data on this has not been published. It has not been peer reviewed. So this is just Charles McClelland. This is nothing that you can take to the bank or, even put in print. But what we found is that being on the field, the rate of transmission has not been high at all. It's all of the other things that we do leading up to the field. And if we do things correctly, we do know that we can play sports safely. And we're going to concentrate on doing that. COVID is out there. You can't stop, Charles from hugging his son when he sees him at the basketball game, but that's how these things are being transmitted. So when I see my son out on the path, I'm not going to hug him. I'm going to keep my mask on. And we ask for you to do the same. Keep your distance, wear your mask, and we will be able to get through this.
No doubt.
The Deuce is cool again. Make it cool again. Hey. Really appreciate your time and comments. A lot of great information on the show there. Know you're extremely busy with all the significant things you're doing. Certainly a lot of Prairie View folks have found out you on the line as they shared it, and they coming in here and make sure people know Prairie View produces productive people, and people are proud, not just Prairie View, obviously, with that base, but really across the SWAC and HBCU in terms of how you're representing the brand, Prairie View, your extent at Texas Southern University. Obviously, those that know your background understand that you are really a man of the SWAC in regards to all affiliations with your sisters, Southern, your children going throughout the SWAC, obviously, your boys, your dad, mom, in terms of their connection, and representative. And as you tease a lot of folks, there are probably some other connections out there. Certainly don't want to leave out your wife at Grambling, because I won't be able to come visit when we have those times appropriately. I'm going to make sure I get that out there. With your connections and close folks in Alabama, we won't leave any of these schools out here. But really, you're a man of the SWAC, man of HBCUs, and many people have found out in regards to your connections about your passion, not just for sports, not just for leadership, but for HBCU sports in general and the history. And you've shown that over the years, frankly, in terms of what you've done in previous stints, and even more so as you've elevated and have a chance to do things for the SWAC. We know more to come. Some things are right around the corner about scheduling. All these sponsorships are coming out. Kudos. We've seen what that means for branding the SWAC and the financial means. And it's done at a critical time, I must say. So I wanted people to realize that. So just wanted to put that on the table for the folks that are following us, to let them know. So in sincere respect, I want to say thank you. Thank you for your time. Thank you for what you're doing.
I appreciate it, and I appreciate all of the Prairie View people. Shout out. I've had a lot of things to happen in my life, and I think if I had to do it all over again, there was only one thing that I would change or ask for, and that would be one more year as an undergraduate at Prairie View. The home gym party, the tent party.
Oh yeah. Stop. What do you know about
party,
that?
the block party behind
the tent party.
Yeah.
The pool party off the yard.
Yeah, well,
okay, guys. All right.
The homecoming tent party. Yes.
Yeah. So shout out to all of my old school Prairie View people. If I had all over to do again, I would take that 5th year instead of graduating that 4th year.
Man, that's all right. A lot of people gonna appreciate that. They need to put that on the wrap and send it down to Prairie View so they can recruit some students. Those
exactly.
Kind of go everywhere, because you did us a favor talking about the lab. We're gonna certainly take that out and make sure we do a running loop to market our show in terms of telling people to come to the lab. So in all seriousness, again, thank you for your time. I know you're busy. We're going to close out on the top of the hour. we'll let you go. When there's some other news shaking in the conference, be sure to let us know, and we'll set up the interview and make sure you can announce it here.
We will. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
No problem with that.
Thank you.
Dr. Kenyatta Cavil with Mike Washington, Charles Bishop. You've heard the commissioner of the SWAC, Southwestern Athletic Conference, Dr. Charles McClelland, closing up on 100 years of history, moving into the next 100 years. And now you have 2 additional conference members in FAMU, the Rattlers, and Bethune-Cookman, state partners, if you would, coming out of the state of Florida, moving the conference from 10 to 12 members. Academically, the conference is at a very strong position. So a lot of positive things going on there. We will go to a break. Before that, we have a quick minute in here. I did want to make sure I did a announcement. As I was teaching, we get to talking fun. I talked about Mike flying back when he was overseas. He was actually in Germany. He was on business. So I want to make sure I put that out there. The man was on business. And obviously, y'all that follow the show all the time and listen to his regular know that he was on the show calling by phone. He actually did not take a special trip. Now, we're working on the jet, and we've been talking to Charles McClelland. You know, you've heard that the SWAC does have a jet. So we're putting our little pennies together. And so we're getting in position, and we told you how rough it is as we fly in these places. We're going to see what we can do as we are talking to Charles and put our pennies together, see if we can get on this SWAC jet. So when things come like that, we can actually put one of us, including Mike, on the big time SWAC jet and get to different places. And, you know, we were negotiating that space with Charles, as he already talking about how would it look if he was going to the SWAC Ncaa Challenge and then had to go out Sunday down to see Jackson State University kick off SWAC conference play, at least on that side with the Eastern Division, against none other than the new member FAMU in terms of the Rattlers. So yeah, a lot of good stuff there. So I'm certainly hoping that we have COVID tests available so I can see what Charles did. And he good, I'll take mine, and I'll be talking about, I need to get on this plane. I need to be coming out of there with this SWAC rap. So we'll do that. So with that, without further ado, we're at the top of the hour. So we're going to close up on the top of the show. We're going to bring you some additional time. So stick with us. So don't tune out. We know great interview there. But give us a minute, and we're going to close out on the top of the era as we let the Hall of Famer Ralph Cooper go on KSUH 1230. And we'll be right back with you as we get in this commercial break. This is Dr. Cavil with Inside the HBCU Sports Lab. Let's get back some of this news of the day, some additional information to cover. We're going to give you a little bit about the MEAC, men's and women's basketball, and then we'll let everybody get to enjoy the rest of the evening. I hope you really enjoyed the insight and information from the Commissioner, Dr. Charles McClelland. He's always a great interview in regards to giving us the latest and the greatest in regards so much insight that you traditionally can't get just from the news cycle without having those back doors. And sometimes I'm able to provide you that information as we look at our sources and get to them, but sometimes it's good just to hear directly from the individual itself. So did want to provide that information appropriate there. So that's great question, gentlemen. I appreciate you all doing what you do. But with that, let's go back to Charles. I know there's some things that you wanted to get out and we can revisit now in terms of HBCU news of the day before we get into a little more of the MEAC, in terms of Tennessee State, OVC, and Hampton update. We'll save MEAC and SWAC men's and women's for next week, but we'll give you a little teaser on the independents and let your thoughts on those be known. But let's share some of this good news that's out there. What other news did you want to share? And then I'll give Mike a chance to do that, and then we can get into a little more of the round ball as it looks like it's going to be played. And so we'll talk about that. But Charles, any additional news that you wanted to share to our followers out there?
Yeah, I want to follow up on what Mike was talking about with the NFL. And next Monday night, a very special Monday night in terms of an all-black officiating crew. And I believe the white hat in that game will be Jerome Bogart. And if I'm not mistaken, he is a Morehouse man. So
that's right.
I want to give a shout out to the NFL officiating crew that will be handling next Monday night's game. It was a historic first. So shout out to NFL in terms of getting that done and those NFL officials for getting that call.
Yeah, that's big time.
Absolutely.
I'm glad that you dug that out and made sure you shared that on the show, as many people may have not caught that information. Really incredible, just the way, as we said, supporting HBCU diaspora, it always finds its way in the mix in different ways. And I know that you have affinity to the umpire and refereeing side as a lot of your friends and colleagues on that side. So I'm sure they share that with you as they are proud, as they continue to try to move up their trajectory and just make sure that the conference is sound in terms of officiating. So it makes sense that you're able to get that news and get it out there. So I appreciate you making sure we got that in the mix.
Sure thing.
Mike, going to you, Professor Washington. What other news did you want to share that's out there?
Yes, two pieces of news that are directly related. One is from the Houston Chronicle, one is from the Houston Business Journal. Prairie View A&M has gotten approval for Dr. Ruth Simmons Center of Race and Justice. Okay, the Texas A&M University Systems Board of Regents approved plans to establish the Center for Race and Justice as a hub for learning, research, and activism. So Simmons has led Prairie View since 2017. But a tremendous move. The other piece, and most recently, is according to the Houston Business Journal, Prairie View A&M received a $10 million donation from an anonymous donor. So the funds will go to assisting students who are suffering financially, especially due to COVID-19. They may be distributed other ways. But this is according to the November 10th press release. So Prairie View A&M, the Prairie View A&M University, in the news, making big things on the Center for Justice and getting a lot more donations toward the university.
Yes, you said there was some additional tie that you also wanted. Is another piece of news that you wanted to jump in there with?
No, those two pieces. There's the piece on the Justice Center and then the piece on the anonymous donation. Those were the two.
I got you.
Let
me go back to Charles and see what else, as he has a bit of information that needs to get out there with those. And then we can get in, maybe discuss a little bit before we get into more of the breakdown of OVC in the Big South with Hampton and Tennessee State, respectively.
Good thing. Shout out to University of Maryland Eastern Shore as they become the first HBCU to add beach volleyball as a sport. So starting Starting in 2022, Maryland Eastern Shore will become the first HBCU to add women's beach volleyball to its roster of sports. And this is a quote from Director of Athletics, Keith Davidson. Women's beach volleyball is a sport we have been looking at for adding for some time, being located here on the shore. We see it as a natural fit to our department and a natural fit to our area. It is the fastest growing sport in the Ncaa, and we believe with the strength of our indoor program that it makes sense to add it to our volleyball offering. So shout out to Maryland Eastern Shore for getting it done in terms of beach volleyball.
Yeah, great point, man. That's another fascinating. I was going to make sure I got that out there if one of you all didn't, but yeah, it's fascinating. But I wanted to add a little bit to that. We've been talking about, HBCUs bringing back, or bringing wrestling, bringing in men's soccer. Obviously we've seen women's soccer quite a bit. You had lacrosse previously for Hampton. In terms of what's going on, Hampton with rowing. And so you're seeing these, what many people would call niche sports, particularly from an HBCU perspective, because you don't see many of the HBCU offering. It's good to see this, but do you see this as just a one-offs, or do you see this as a trend that you will see more HBCUs looking at, and this is from different divisions, NEIA, Division II, to now the Division I, where you see these unique or particular sports that are not necessarily conference offerings, but individual institutions seeing where they can make a move that puts them in a unique position to maybe get some more marketing out of it, or just aligning their school in the direction that they see space goes. As I said, being on the Eastern Shore makes a lot of sense to do that. You got the beaches. Why not make that connection? Great indoor team. And so the synergy is there. What are your thoughts first with you, Mike, in terms of, do you think more of this is going to happen, or is this just a blip with a couple of institutions doing this at various levels?
No, I honestly see this as, a series of events leading to more that are yet to come. And I think it's strategically done. It may be done to align with the conference. It may be done to align with some of the geographical sports preferences, on the East Coast. Maybe it makes sense to do, but I think you'll see a lot more of these instances coming up. You mentioned lacrosse. It makes sense for Hampton. They're in the Northeast. That's the cradle and the hub for lacrosse right now. But I wouldn't be surprised if you maybe see a few more HBCUs reconsider more, maybe Morgan State or somewhere else, so, sports like lacrosse. And I think as more and more HBCUs start to align and look at these type of niche sports, I think you'll see a lot more instances of this type of thing happening.
No doubt.
With that inside, before I go to you, Charles, in terms of your analysis of that, I wanted to add on, you have EF Pro Cycling and Cannondale intend to fund and launch cycling programs at HBCUs, as well as tribal colleges and universities, TCU as they're called in a lot of different places. And this comes from Cycling Tips. Starting in 2021 with an initial commitment of 3 years, they will partner with USA Cycling, the national governing body for cycling in the U.S. The initiative will help create opportunities and increase racial diversity in cycling at the collegiate level in the United States and beyond. The initiative will fund 2 new cycling programs at HBCUs and 1 at a TCU. The initiative was inspired by the new collegiate team at St. Augustine University, the first collegiate program at HBCUs that was launched back in April that we talked about in 2020, a couple of weeks ago. So again, what are your framings in terms of this announcement? We heard that announcement with the SIAC when you had 6 of the conference members in the SIAC get funding from the sport of men's volleyball that they're kicking off. So unique things of that. We had Professor Nana Asari at Texas Southern University talk about men's soccer and how they're doing, possibly trying to figure it out. Yeah. As we're in this era where we're starting to see a lot more corporations and now even these programs, if you would, and organizations, nonprofit-wise, that are looking at also making sure that they're more ethnically and ethnically solid across the board in terms of racial ramifications of the decision you're making. So what are your thoughts in terms of all this and those mixed is coming in terms of a tipping point to see more of it. What are your thoughts?
I think, Dr. Cavil, it is an exciting trend, whether you're talking about esports or you're talking about wrestling or beach volleyball. I think you're starting to see HBCUs offer more of a variety. And we had a show, if I'm not mistaken, maybe a year or two ago, where we talked about parents looking at alternatives to football, especially with the growth of concussions and things of that nature. We're starting to see more African-American young men either playing soccer or lacrosse or sports that are not, just primarily football and basketball. So I think it's a very exciting trend moving forward in terms of starting to get into diversifying some of the offerings that we have at HBCUs. And I tell you what, I'm excited. I have two nephews. One is a wrestler and the other one is a soccer player. So I'm hopefully, we can get them at a HBCU and they can find a program that they will fall in love with as well.
Yep. Doc, if I may add to that, Chuck Hunt made a very good comment. I happened to look down and see his comment. He said a lot of HBCUs are garnering more diverse populations. And so that's bringing also a love and desire for these different types of sports, i.e. the men's and women's soccer, golf as well, tennis. So that's a very good point. I want to give Chuck Hunt some credit for that comment.
Yeah, great point there. And we jump in here with the OVC and Big South, and we'll get a chance to close out on another comment or two. Make sure it seems like there was another bit of news that you want to get in there. But I wanted to talk about former Tennessee State alum, Houston Rocket for now, as Chris Gardner, one of the guys that does some production work for us in terms of mixing and updating things out there as well. A good point to chime in. Go to YouTube, Dr. Cavill's Inside the HBCU Sports Lab or Inside the HBCU Sports Lab, YouTube, to check us out. Make sure you like us and subscribe to the network there. That helps us to keep us moving forward in terms of financial well-being. So make sure you do that. And follow us on Twitter, Inside the HBCU Sports Lab 1. So following on that so we can give you information. But Chris talked about the fact that, as we say, Houston Rocket now, you might have known that he is on the trade blocks. And while the trade will not be consummated at this point, he will be going, Robert Covington will be checking it up with the Blazers, playoff team as well. So still should be in the playoffs mix, and a lot of things will be interesting to see, as it looks like the Rockets are making a lot of moves with some trade requests. Different story, different show for that. But what I wanted to bring your attention to was he as in Robert Covington, many know that he's an alum of Tennessee State, and he donated to his alma mater, TSU Tigers, and he donated enough funds where they will be building for a practice facility on campus. Tennessee State, people may recall that they have, if not the only, certainly one of the few indoor football facilities for HBCU, and now they want to have their own practice facility on campus. That's a lot of good stuff there. Kudos for him finding a way to give back. He's given back to him before in 2013. He did the Covington Pavilion for future basketball programs. Will be a lot of this in terms, but in the past, he's given other different money to the school. So he really talks about, I love my alma mater. I'm not donating a new practice facility for the recognition or because I need to. I'm doing it because I truly want to. I know what the school didn't have when I was here as a student, and I want the future generation of kids to have the best resources available to them to build their future both on and off the court. I want them to step on this campus and feel like their dreams can come true because mine really did. Boy, I talk about that was a powerful statement made there, and be remiss if I did not share that. But wanted to get in there. You can get your thoughts on that. But as you do that, let me make sure that you get a chance to talk about what are your thoughts, men's and women's Tennessee State Charles basketball coming up this season, along with any thoughts you want to start out first with the comment by Robert Covington and that donation.
Sure thing. And I'm going to make sure I follow back up on the basketball at Tennessee State. But I did want to mention, Real quick, Alabama A&M, as reported by Black College Nine's Michael Coker, they named a new head coach, Elliott Jones, who will be taking over that baseball program. So, I get really excited about baseball, so I want to make sure I got that in. He's coming into that juggernaut that's going to be the SWAC East. So good luck. Jones,
have fun.
Have fun with that. But talking about Tennessee State basketball, that is a very tough conference. When you're talking about the Ohio Valley Conference, you're talking about Belmont, Austin Peay, those schools, Murray State, schools that have made some noise in the NCAA tournament. But they bring back a young man, Carlos Marshall, and he was averaged almost 12 points a game and 5 rebounds for them last year. Had a very tough front court. They had kind of a surprise finish where they finished right in the middle of the pack because I think they were picked toward the back half of the OVC last year, but they made a surprising run last year. They add a couple of guys transferred from Georgia State, Josh Linder, as well as a couple of JUCO guys, Shaquan Barrett and Yusuf Muhammad. So we'll see if they can improve upon that 5th place finish, but it's a tall order when you're talking about trying to fight through over there in the OVC with Belmont, Austin Peay, and Murray State.
I think you said Alabama State, Alabama A&M.
Alabama A&M.
Yeah, you're going to make some folks at Alabama State nervous. You had me thinking twice. I was like,
oh, no.
Alabama State.
Alabama A&M.
Oh, boy. Yeah, but no problem. Great information to get out there, and so important there. With that, Mike, what are your thoughts on Tennessee State in terms of the OVC men's and women's side? Any thoughts that you have that you want to get in there, Mike?
Yeah. Let me. I think Charles talked about some of their play, and if you look at where Tennessee State, finished, last year, it was kind of 6th. They were at the bottom of the pack in defense. The women's, on the other hand, the weird thing is that, they did fairly well. However, they were dead last in defense. So they have nowhere to go but to improve in defense. And then they also were number 10 in the conference in total offense. So number 10 and number 12. So you got to wonder, how good their recruiting was to bring in some talent, number one. And then number two, it's going to take some time for them to get past the UT Martins, the, Tennessee Techs, so I think it's a tough call for the women. On the men, I think they actually have a good shot. I think they actually were 2nd in scoring, but a little further in defense at one point. And the margin of scoring between them and others was, even though they were like number 6 or 7, between them and number 1 was maybe 7 points in average scoring. So if they bring the right pieces in, I think the men have a shot to at least be competitive and to move up a couple of notches. But it's still going to be a tough challenge in the OVC for Tennessee State men.
Great point. Let's stick with you, Mike, and move over to the Hampton, the other independent, the newest independent, if you would, out of the Big South. Hampton University, men's and women's basketball, Coach Six there, doing a lot of good things. Legend over there, Joyner, with the men's program, with his family, dynasty of coaching. What are your thoughts in terms of what's going on with Hampton men's and women's basketball this season in the Big South?
So again, I kind of go look to the statistics last year, and Hampton, believe it or not, was number 2 in scoring in the Big South. Guess where they were? In scoring defense? Number 11. So unfortunately, you heard Dr. McClelland say that SWAC was a guard league. They obviously bought some of that mentality to the Big South with some scores, but they need some. They also were almost dead last in rebounding as well. So I think they're going to need to really hit the beats a little bit. I don't know who all they're bringing in this year, so I haven't had a chance to really dive in and see, who they bought and who's new. Thank you. That's why we have Charles.
Well, you take a look at the Hampton men, and it's not often, but they had 2 20-point scores last year, and they lose both of them. So I'm expecting a little bit of slippage in terms of Hampton's men. They had Jermaine Morrow. He averaged 24.8 points last year, and they also had Ben Stanley. He was averaging 22 points last year. They lose both of them. They bring in a couple of Old Dominion transfers, Dejour Dickens and Marquise Godwin. They also bring in a JUCO guy, Najee Thomas. So we'll see what it is that Hampton can do, but that's going to be, I expect, kind of a steep drop off, if you will, from the Hampton Pirates. Key returning coming back is Davion Warren. So it's going to be tough as far as the Hampton men over there in the Big South. As far as the women, keep a couple names to keep in mind. Lauren von Arsdale. She was an all-conference pick. That they are picked to finish fourth in the Big South, but she was two players from Hampton's Lady Pirates team. You know, that's a blue blood program from the MEAC going over to the Big South, and they've been in the Big South now for a couple years now. But Lauren von Arsdale, she averaged 15.2 points per game last year. She also averaged 2.7 rebounds. You also have Nyla Young. She was a double-double individual last year, averaging 12 points per game. 12 points per game and 7 rebounds. So they finished right toward the upper tier, if you will. So to see if they can kind of make a move with these two ball players, I tell you what, Lauren von Arsdale, she is a former all-freshman pick. She was a former freshman player of the year for Hampton. So we'll see what they can do over there in the Big South.
Hampton also, the women also finished fourth, you know, in scoring offense. And if you also look at defense, they were right at fifth. Last year they had a balanced attack, you know, free throw, rebound. As you say, they were in the top tier if you look at all of the statistical boundaries. So they were competing with that top tier in all areas. So if they can bring in some more scorers, I think they can be very competitive. 3-point percentage, they were tops. So you look at them statistically, they look really good last year. Let's see what they can do with some of these new players this year.
Ended the season last year, winning their last six of their last 7 games. Big win over Campbell last year toward the end of the year. So keep an eye out on the Hampton Lady Pirates.
Yep. Only insight you can get like that is from the lab. With these two brothers giving you that basketball insight. So I hope you appreciated that. I do want to tease. We're going to go a little more on the fantasy side now, as that's, you know, we've done a little bit of fantasy with the SWAC last week in terms of FAMU, Bethune-Cookman. If they were joining the SWAC, we had what that would look like as Jimmy Wilson, a resident basketball expert that gives us all types of tie-ins. So he did that for us. So now I'm going to put you all on the spot, gentlemen, since you did that breakdown. If this is fantasy now, so just for giggles, as they say, we won't say the other word because we're a clean show. We can say anything on the show. Just saying that's what we do. We do have better halves that we got to answer to, so we gonna keep that clean this time. All right. But with that said, if Tennessee State and Hampton on the men's side were in the SWAC for 2020, where would you have them based on the top 10? Where would you slide them? Let's start with you, Charles, first, in regards to Tennessee State. Where are they ranked in the SWAC in terms of the 10? This is just a 10 member for fantasy basketball 2020. Where would you have Tennessee State men in the SWAC 2020?
Tennessee State's men will probably be in the upper tier of the SWAC. They play in a very rough and tough conference over there in the Ohio Valley Conference. So I would think that Tennessee State would be right in the upper tier, right up there with those, with that Texas Southern, Prairie View, Southern, somewhere right up in the mix, because unlike a lot of guard play, I think in the SWAC, Tennessee State has a rugged front court. And, you know, if you take a look at kind of the OVC teams, those front courts, they really pound the boards and whatnot. So, and you got a guy like Carlos Marshall. He's one of those guys that can hit the boards, you know, like Yahuza's Rosas, if you will, for Texas Southern in the SWAC. So
you have them, what is that? Am I hearing 2 or 3? 4?
I'm thinking Tennessee State is roughly in that 2 or 3, you know, edging out somebody at 4. Whoever those mid-tier teams, they're going to have to fight with a Tennessee State.
I got you. I like that. Beautiful insight. Before I go to you, Mike, let's jump to Hampton men's. Where do you have them ranked in the SWAC in terms of that, Charles? Where would you have them if we're playing this fantasy basketball? Top teams, where do you would have Hampton, as we did with Bethune-Cookman and FAMU in the SWAC. We know that becomes reality, but just for giggles, where would you have Hampton in terms of their men's on the basketball ranking? Where would you put them?
Well, like I was saying, last year I would have probably had Hampton up in the upper tier, but with them losing 2 20-point scorers going into this season, I think they're going to kind of fall back to the pack a little bit. So I'm falling back to the pack comparatively to where they are within their conference. They will probably be a mid-tier SWAC team.
Yeah, so you're saying 4, 5, 6, 5, 6,
I'm
7?
saying probably five or six.
Right. So similar to what happened to Prairie View losing all the talent that they had with their championship run.
Very much so.
Falling to 3, 4. So you're saying just behind that 5, 6. Be interesting. Jimmy's gonna watch this, so we're gonna see what he says, and we'll
I can't wait.
see how sharp you are. Let's go to Mike and get your thoughts. Tennessee State first, and then Hampton on the men's side. Where do they fit in terms of the SWAC? Fantasy now. This is just fantasy.
I guess I would agree with CB in the upper tier, simply because if you look at statistically where they were last couple of years, I've been going back, they beat the boards up. They are a heavy rebounding team, so it means they play rough. Their scoring margin wasn't as high, but their defense, so I put them up in the upper tier. I don't know if I put them as tops, but because of the way they play, they've also been beat up by some tough teams in the OVC as well. I think they play a rough style ball that would make them successful in some of the SWAC teams, and I think they would be in the upper tier of the team. The top, I'd say maybe 3, 4, somewhere in that range.
What about Hampton?
Hampton, I put them in the lower tier, simply because they were, like I said, they were number one. They were scoring 80 points a game last year, and as Charles told you, they had two of the top scorers. They're gone. They were already dead last in defense. So I don't know if you look at who they're bringing in, I don't know how much of an improvement that is, but right now there's nothing that leads me to say that they're going to be at least maybe the third quadrant of the SWAC.
You have them dropping down to 7, 8, maybe 9.
Yes, actually 7, 8.
That's fair, especially with the defensive rankings. Yeah.
Good job. Quickly, we're on top of it, but I want to stretch this out. I want to make sure Sherry's not dead, so I want to get into women. So quickly, women, in terms of Tennessee State and Hampton in the SWAC, Mike, where do you rank them?
Just looking at where Tennessee State's women play.
New coach. Yeah, so
I don't see it. I see them in the lower quadrant, the lower tier. I mean, you got a lot of teams that are there that have been there in the top 4 or 5 last year that will be there this year, and you have some teams that will probably improve. I see them in the bottom tier of the SWAC.
Yeah.
9, 10, 11. What about Hampton?
Hampton's different. I think I see them in the middle tier. That's a little
Hampton's different.
All right. Charles, jump over to Tennessee State. Where you have them?
Yeah, the SWAC women, they're loaded. So Tennessee State will probably be in that bottom tier. New head coach Ty Evans taking over first season of Tennessee State. They're picked to finish 12th in the OVC. So not expecting too much from the Tennessee State Lady Tigers. But the Hampton Lady Pirates, they would be up there in that upper tier. With your
Mike had them in the middle upper tier. Where you have them in the upper tier?
I probably have Hampton right around 3. That's a blue blood program now. That's program. That. They want some championships.
This is where it gets fun. We get to just throw our knowledge. Obviously, we get a little longer than me. With that, we're about to close up, but I wanted to share this. Howard continues to win. 2021, 3-star, 4-star.
Yes.
Power Forward Kuluel Mading commits to Howard, number 177 overall prospect, 2021 247 sports composite ranking, has committed to Howard. He announced last Saturday the 6'9", 190-pound 3-star power forward prospect out of Burlington, North Carolina school chose the Bison over programs such as Clemson, East Carolina, Providence, Tulsa, UNC Greensboro, UNC Wilmington, and VCU. Mading becomes Kenny Blakeland's first commitment in 2021 class and the second highest ranked recruit in the program history, following Maker in terms of this past summer. Mading is ranked number 29, Power Forward. And we'll get a little bit into the MEAC men's and women's next weekend. So tune in as we'll give you an update on what that looks like. The other thing I wanted to talk about that I'd be remiss in terms of just news that is important that's out there in terms of Deion Sanders suiting up Jackson State in terms of Michael Strahan's collection out of JC Penney. That is really nice. Belts, dress shirts, neckwear, belts, accessories for less than $200. He's did that with Texas Southern University in terms of the overall university. For students that go and do their interviews, they had a chance. He rolled that out last year. So it makes sense that he's teaming up with another Hall of Famer in terms of Deion Sanders and what he's doing with Jackson State. You know, Coach Prime likes to be sharp, doing this within a budget. Also, you got to understand, you got the Ncaa guidelines in terms of the financial perspective, what you can do. So it really fits. I really like the marketing, branding of this, two brands coming together to the third brand in a lot of ways in terms of what this means. So I thought that was something that was just brilliant in terms of making all the things work and all the different reasons in terms of why it adds up. So I thought that was a nice one. I wanted to make sure we share out that. Even more importantly, I wanted to make sure I got this out of here before we close. Stick with me. Morris Brown College application for accreditation approved after nearly 20 years, HBCUBuzz.com. Obviously, not quite sports related, big time program. Remember, they were moved up to Division I. Were this close to being in the SWAC because they got approved, if you recall, at that time by the athletic directors.
Yeah.
But were not approved by the presidents. And obviously, it seems they knew in terms of concerns financially that did not allow that move to take place. And I don't know, maybe it was made more positive and helped make it work as they stayed Division I. But nearly 2 decades after losing accreditation, Morris Brown College announced that the school accreditation application with the Transnational Association of Christian Colleges and Schools, TRACS, has been approved. Paul Quinn College has went through this track, and you see how they're doing really solid, good things. So it's really amazing and good to hear. You don't hear these schools being able to bounce back. And you know, for our institution to have accreditation is significantly huge. This is a major step towards the institution receiving full accreditation since having its accreditation revoked by SAC-COC, that's the Southern Association of College Schools, back in 2002 due to debt and financial management. This is history in the making. Dr. Kevin James said Morris Brown intends to become the first HBCU to earn its accreditation back 20 years after losing it. When Morris Brown achieves candidacy status, hopefully by April 2021, it will give the college all the rights and full accredited college and privilege, which allows students to receive financial aid, additional student degrees, will be recognized by other schools and other employees. So kudos for Morris Brown. Wanted to close on that positive note. And with
somebody called Dr. Lee because Mr. Wade is back.
Yeah. Very appropriate.
I miss Morris Brown's band.
Yeah.
Thank you for listening to Inside HBCU Sports Lab. Make sure you share on our podcast with your friends and colleagues. Again, kudos to all our followers out there chiming in throughout the show and sharing everything. Great show, great interaction by all of you all out there. Appreciate so much of you all promoting us. Again, support us, like us, subscribe to us. Cash App is out there. We'll get you that information. Dr. Jafus Cavil, Jafus.Cavil, JAFUS.Cavil. Certainly can use the Cash App. We'll put that out there formally so you can support us in the likes areas so we can continue to give you this great updates and news. Hopefully that is well received. Again, I'm Dr. Kenyatta Cavil, the Dean of HBCU College HBCU Sports with Mike Washington, Charles Bishop, and our review of all things HBCU sports, interview with Dr. Charles McClelland, a review of the independent programs, Hampton of Tennessee State, Hampton of the Big South, Tennessee State of the OVC. Hope you enjoyed that basketball updates, both on the men's and women's side. And again, our interview with the SWAC Commissioner, Dr. Charles McClelland, give you insight on HBCU sports and COVID-19, particularly SWAC, moving forward with men's and women's basketball. Again, we thank you for listening to Dr. Cavil's Inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Washington, Charles Bishop, every Tuesday right here at 6 o'clock. We look forward to next week as we will discuss the latest on the news in the lab. Follow me Dr. Kenyatta Cavil, DrKenyattaCavil on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Follow us on Twitter at Inside the HBCU Sports Lab 1. Follow us on YouTube and subscribe at Inside the HBCU Sports Lab. Dream big and continue to move forward. We will talk with you soon.
Course, lecture,
Miss.
Dismiss.
YT Productions.
I love my HBCU.